Y'all know what it is.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Eggs. Thanks so much for tuning in this week and for contributing to our ever-growing community of entrepreneurs and business leaders. Be sure to check out our website at eggscast.com for past episodes featuring the brilliant people who've been kind enough to share their knowledge on the show, and today's episode will be no exception. Today's special guest is the incredible Bob Wheeler. Bob is a financial expert, motivator, author, comedian, podcast host, and founder of The Money Nerve. In addition, he's a partner at the Santa Monica-based accounting firm Wheeler & Buy CPA and CFO of the world-famous Comedy Store. Bob has melded his crusade for personal growth with his accounting expertise to create a new approach to personal finance. He works vehemently to help others gain insights about how their emotions are driving their financial decisions and helps them retake control of their pocketbook by creating a healthy relationship with money. Bob joins us today for a conversation about how our emotions can impact financial decision-making, why nearly all of us could benefit from a little financial therapy, taking baby steps to get back on the right path to financial freedom, and so much more. Please join us in welcoming to the show financial expert, Bob Wheeler. Hey, Bob, how are you?
I'm good. How y'all doing today?
Very well. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this. We're excited for the conversation. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Always love to talk about money.
Well, it's perfect. And I will apologize. I mean, you'll notice that me and Mike are in full hat mode today. We're getting a late stage hair right now. So it's time for it's hat time. So for anybody who watches the show every week, they'll recognize this hat because it appears, about 2 or 3 weeks before I get a haircut. So,
well, I don't even have hair to cut. So, I probably just need a tattoo of a hat or hair. So,
well, Bob,
Bob, let's go ahead and I guess start a little bit at the beginning. Let's talk a little bit about just sort of who you are, where you come from, and how you got into this line of work among other lines of work that you happen to participate in.
Absolutely. All mistakes. That's how I got here. Well, actually, when I was a kid, when I was going to college, I wanted to be a lawyer because lawyers are great, and then I got to meet lawyers and I went, I don't want to do that. I actually was taking accounting just because it was a way to help my grade point average. It was something that was sort of easy. And of course, everybody knows you can't make money doing something that's easy. So you got to do something that's hard. So that wasn't like a course that I thought of going down. But the accounting was sort of the way that just made a path for me. I got into accounting. And then, of course, that's the way to go straight to comedy is accounting, doing books.
Pretty straight.
Pretty straight path. I started doing comedy because I realized I wasn't going to, I started getting out there because I realized I wasn't going to be discovered, sitting in an accounting office doing tax returns, both of which I enjoy doing, taxes and jokes. But so I sort of got into that. I work with a lot of comics. I work with a lot of entertainment people, a lot of creative folks. And I discovered that people would go out and do exactly the opposite of what I would tell them. And I realized, wow, it has nothing to do with 2 + 2 is 4. If you think that 2 + 2 is 9 or it's 1 or whatever the mindset is. So I started getting into people's mindset. Also, at the same time, I was doing great helping other people, but my financial personal story was a mess, but I could tell you what to do, but I wouldn't follow that same advice, And so I had to start really looking at my own journey of where was I self-sabotaging and what were the stories and the money blocks and beliefs that I had created that I was holding on to. And so it really just started me down this path of what makes us tick and click when it comes to money and what's going on unconsciously, because that's where most of the work is happening. And so from there, I ended up writing a book, The Money Nerve, because I think emotional stuff is very visceral. You win the lottery, you're like, woo, your bank is overdrawn or you get declined with a credit card, you're about to vomit, right? You get nauseous. It's physical. It's in us. And so that's where I got the name The Money Nerve, was just really trying to identify the fact that we carry it internally. And most of us spend most of our lives just trying to present really well and hope that nobody finds out our secrets.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Well, and it's funny, hearing your story about going into accounting as sort of just like a way to get a credit. And I'm sort of the opposite. I was taking a program that was like a marketing and management kind of program. And I had to take an accounting course in there. I've never seen myself as being particularly good with money. I aced accounting. And that was like for whatever reason, I was the only kid that actually got my books perfectly right in accounting. And then the rest of my life, I went on to total financial disasters. So it's kind of ironic. I was good at it in practice, but yeah, doing it in real life was a challenge.
Yeah.
So, working with comedians and accounting, I'm sure that's, not the cleanest, I picture comedians kind of like DJs when it comes to their books, not very good. and that could be a stereotype. That could be kind of like it seems like they probably come to a set, walk away with a couple $100 in cash, probably never put that money in their account, probably never even track it, and then wonder why they don't have any taxes at the end of the year. That kind of sounds like a normal track of progression for a comedian. I don't know, I could be wrong.
No, but I think that's true for a lot of creative types. I think I spent some money. I don't have any left, so therefore it must have all been expensed out, and it must be business related. Maybe
those 8 beers on that Thursday night had to be a write-off, right?
That's right. It's research. Exactly.
Well, funny, and that you mentioned that about creative types. So if you didn't know, Mike's background is in DJing. He's club DJ, and so I think he can relate to the plight of the entertainer. I work in creative services. I run a marketing agency, and I'm on the art side. And I will say too, just it's been my experience that the money thing, and I honestly think it's mindset. I think is a big piece of it, and I think prioritization is a big part of it. When you're, basically using all your brain has to offer for creative venture, right? You're trying to come up with new ideas, crack new jokes, design the latest logo or craft a set. The brain juice is just not allocated for money. Like most of us don't care until all of a sudden we don't have any. And so I wonder if we could talk a little bit about just, I guess, getting into starting to recognize the problem. So obviously you mentioned in your career that you began to sort of see this, shift in people where they never had money or they never understood where the money was going, but somehow maybe they were making plenty of money, and so it's kind of a this weird balance, right? And so I wonder if you talk a little bit about just sort of first how you began to recognize this problem in people, and then second maybe how people can start to realize this in their own journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one piece too that I want to lay out is people sometimes don't know if they're left brain, right brain. And I think a lot of creative types, left brain, will come in and say, I don't know anything about numbers, so I'm excused from having any responsibility. So right there, I'm already starting with, there's a mindset that I'm creative, I'm left brain, I can't do that. But just because you're left brain or right brain doesn't mean necessarily that you're more amazing at it or not. I happen to be sort of both. So it drives people crazy because I can do creative. And then I'm like, wait a minute, where's the 2 cents that and people are like, what, you're a little anal. So, I have the best and worst of both worlds. I think what happens is, for a lot of us, where this all starts is really childhood, right? We get all of our programming when we're 4, 5, 6 years old. You're greedy, you're selfish, you're such a good boy, you're such a good girl. And then we're like, oh, I like that reward, or I don't like being told that I'm not smart enough, or I'm never going to amount to anything. Or it might be, I was talking with a guest the other day, and I had the same situation. She was deciding whether or not she was going to rob her daughter's piggy bank because they did pay some credit card bills. My parents, God bless them, didn't have a lot of tools. If I had money in the bank and they needed it, there went my money. So I had a mindset of why bother? Why am I going to save the money? And not to make them wrong. It's just, that was my experience. And so we all have these different experiences of what money means or what it doesn't mean, or it's just always there. There's a safety net. There's not a safety net. And then we just start building stories to reaffirm what we believe to be true, even if it isn't. And so then we have to start to unravel that. What did my parents say about money? If I said, hey, mom and dad, how much do you make? And they go, don't ever ask that question. How shameful. Oh,
that's my family right there.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's for a lot of people, talking about money is a conflict. It means we have to fight. It doesn't mean, oh, it's just a difficult conversation that we have to learn to take a break when it gets tense. Lots of couples that I know where one spouse spends all the money and then has to spend all their time hiding it from the other one so they don't get into fights. And it all becomes a game. And so the more we can just be transparent about what our beliefs are, it doesn't make it right or wrong. If I want to have a car so that everybody thinks I'm super cool, it doesn't make it right or wrong, but at least now I understand why I have that need for the car.
Yeah. On your bio sheet that you send us, there's a suggested questions. One of the suggested questions is, why do we need financial therapy? And I didn't even know financial, well, I guess, it's there, but I didn't realize that financial therapy was a thing, and why we would actually need it. Like, I guess that sounds like more like a marriage counseling kind of question, like, yeah, he's spending the money, why can't I keep it, kind of thing. But
yeah,
on more of a personal level, what is financial therapy, and why should we even consider it an option or look down that road?
Well, the thing about money is it's a lifelong relationship. We think about money all the time. Am I going to buy my lunch? Am I going to buy somebody else's lunch so they think I'm cool? Like, we're making financial decisions hundreds of times a day. Do I put it on a charge card? Do I slow the line down and pay cash? Right. And so we're constantly dealing with money. Money is a relationship, just like when you're involved with another person. It goes on for as long as it goes on. We're going to be making money decisions until we can't make decisions. And so we need to actually, I think, take a look at that and decide, do I want to have a healthy relationship? Do I want to be in denial? Do I want to actually be proactive? Do I want to look at sort of the warts and all? Because if I'm not being honest with myself, then I'm not going to move the needle very far. I've had clients call me up and they'll go, "You screwed up my taxes. You put down I made $300,000. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I made a mistake. Let's go through the numbers. You gave me 50, 50, 100, 100. Yeah, well, that's 300,000. Well, where did it go? Well, I don't know. Like, I'm just right. And so they're so emotional. And yet we look at the numbers and they pan out. And then they're just like, well, I don't understand. And so the more we can get really aware of how we deal with our money and what it brings up for us. I work with a lot of therapists who have trouble asking their clients to pay the bill because, well, they were crying at the end and I didn't want to seem greedy by going, here's the bill for my services. Right. And so many people just have issues around money, but it's not something we talk about. We don't talk about sex and politics or religion, supposedly, but we'd still rather talk about those things than talk about money.
Yeah, I think that's right. I want to talk about something you touched on in there too, which is just sort of our psychology, and I say in a general sense as humans, right? I mean, everybody has their own approach, and there's certainly people who aren't having a bad relationship with money, and it probably did stem from their youth. Maybe they grew up in a family with money that knew how to delegate and knew how to handle finances and stuff like that. But for what I assume is the lion's share of people, there's some psychology involved here. And you mentioned a couple of times this idea of the story that we tell ourselves or the story that we're trying to put out for other people, right? So this idea of keeping up with the Joneses or maintaining an appearance. And so I wonder if you could talk at all about just sort of the psychology of that. And I think that'll help us, or if we can sort of unlock that or understand that maybe that is a big piece of our lives, but that is something that we can move beyond, that it doesn't just have to be foregone. I wonder if that doesn't help us sort of, I guess, prep for the next step.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I talk with people and I go back and look at people's history, a lot of it's about self-worth. Am I enough? Am I too much? Where do I come up short? And how can I appear to be enough? There's a lot of fear for a lot of people. I have money and I'm afraid that people only like me because I have money. I'm afraid people are always going to be asking me for money, or I'm afraid I don't deserve it. If I don't have money, well, I'm afraid that I'm not enough. People will think that I'm a failure. There's so many people that will tell me that they can't do this and this because if they fail, their parents won't love them anymore. And so often I'll say to clients, would you be willing to go and ask your parents what's the dollar amount at which they'll stop loving you? Just so you know. Right. And they're like, what? Right? Because maybe there's no dollar amount, or maybe there is. Maybe it's like 1.2 million. If you lose that, you're just out. But at least then you know, right? But there's these stories that we create around whether we're worthy. And it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. I have lots of wealthy clients that have extreme anxiety around their money, and a lot of insecurity. So the more we can start to know ourselves and what money means to us, and what our relationship with money is, the more we can then say, oh, okay, that works for me, or okay, I don't like that, but I can live with it. Like, that doesn't mean, like, there are certain things that I still do. I still run around making sure that there's 800 cupboards full of food because I come from a scarcity mindset. Now, I don't let it rule my life, and I can laugh at it, but it's probably never going to go away. I'm still going to check the cupboards, but it doesn't make me good or bad. It just makes me go, yeah, that's some of that stuff from childhood.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder too, and I don't know if you can make a grand declaration on this idea or not, but in your experience, just working with, I know you've got, thousands of clients at this point, and you spend a lot of time looking at people's money and dealing with their experiences. How often, or could you make any kind of statement around how much of money or lack thereof, for those of us that maybe aren't where we want to be financially or whatever, how much of it do you think is mistakes and missteps? So lack of knowledge, for example, or, doing the wrong thing with money versus this mindset component? Like, how much are we actually keeping ourselves out of it versus, every time I get $1, I spend it wrong?
So I actually would say probably the majority, maybe I don't know if it's 90%, but I would say a good portion of it's mindset. Certainly you can make mistakes, but you may be making mistakes because you're afraid you're going to do it wrong, or like it's uncorrectable. And I have found, and I've talked to a lot of other people about money and mindset, and everybody that I talk to, I can't think of anybody that hasn't said it, has come back and said, it doesn't matter how much money I make. It comes back to what my mindset is around the money. I know people that make $50,000 and they've got $500,000 saved up, and you're like, what? And then I know people that make a couple $1 million a year and they maybe have $50 saved up, or they're in extreme debt. Mindset is so important. And I just know so many people that think, well, if I had another 50,000 or 100,000, or if I just win the lottery, it will change everything. And it won't change anything. It'll just amplify the fear and the missteps. Certainly we can make mistakes, and I've certainly made mistakes, and I can trace a lot of even those mistakes back to my mindset.
Yeah. Well, and I asked that, it's funny because like in mine and my wife's life, for example, we've been married 19 years now, and dated 6 years before that. And so we've been together forever. And we have always joked that we're kind of even Steven, right? We never seem to really get ahead, but like, we'll get hit with $1,000 car repair, and then all of a sudden there's $1,000 check coming in. Right. And so like, right. We never really get ahead, but we always stay even. And so that's why I ask about sort of, the psychology of it, whether it's a mindset problem or it's or something else. So like, if we're actually keeping ourselves from being further because our mindset is we're even Steven, are we actually hindering our ability to grow?
Well, and I would ask you, and you don't have to share the number, but you may have a number that you're comfortable with having in your bank account. It might be break even. It might be 5,000. It might be 10,000. And I can tell you, every single one of my clients, if they get a windfall, they immediately go out and spend the money. Even before it's hit the bank, they've already got it all spent and gone till they're back to their comfort level of a bank account. I try to get people, when they get a settlement or an IRS payment or a huge business windfall they weren't expecting, to just leave the money in the bank account for 30 days. And most people almost have a heart attack. Like, you just want me to leave it there? But yeah, just leave it there. Just go in and look at it. It freaks people out. So you may have a comfort level of, as long as there's $2,500 in the bank, we're good. And you're going to stay at that level until you can push yourself to make it double or triple.
Yeah. Well, and I can share like a little experience, which is that last year we did pretty well in terms of business. Things went pretty well for us. We did a good job. And for the first time, maybe in my whole life, I was able to actually set some money away and kind of sit on it for a while. Right. And I sat on it for a good 6 months, 7 months. And while we were working through a project, basically I took a giant deposit on a project and was able to sort of sit on that money. And so for the first time we had savings. Then back in the spirit of even Steven, something happened in our business, and the January to May, I basically didn't work. And so basically all that money that was in savings is now gone, and we're right back to where we were. And so, and so it just, I don't know, it feels like karmic or universal, like somebody's just playing a joke. But at the same time, I spend a lot of time on my own mindset. I tend to go negative sometimes. And so I keep trying to tell myself, no, it's okay. Just look for the next win, look for the next win, look for the next win, and we'll get past it. Right. But it's funny how sort of karmically we always end up right where we were. And so,
yeah, no, absolutely. I had to do it. And I do this with clients too. I did a lot of tricking myself. I did a lot of automated savings and a lot of things in small increments just to take it out of my own control. Because left to my own devices, I wasn't managing things. Interestingly, and I think this is true for a lot of people, I was really good about managing my business bank accounts and not my own. So I tried to keep everything in the business, because as soon as it went into my personal, I'm like, oh, that's free money. I don't have to be responsible. But because I had employees and everything else, I'm really careful about the business accounts and making sure they're savings and making sure all that stuff. But the minute it goes into my personal, free reign.
I was wondering if you might be able to talk a little bit about becoming the CFO for the Comedy Store and the process that entailed, and the first few years of working with them.
Yeah, so that's, it's interesting. So I was doing comedy, and all my friends were comics, and Comedy Store happens to have 3 showrooms, which in LA, most of them have one stage. And so I was doing a show, I was doing comedy, and then a friend of mine was talking to Mitzi, the owner, and apparently they were having troubles. They had like $100,000 worth of payroll taxes due. They'd gotten some letters saying, we're going to shut you down. And, I just wanted to be a comic. I wasn't telling people that I'm a CPA, let me do your taxes after I get off stage. I'm like, I'm just a comic. I have no other skill set. And Mitzi called me up and she's like, this is Mitzi Shore. I'm like, I know who you are. Everybody knows who you are.
I was going to say, that sounds like every impression of Mitzi I've ever heard.
She's like, you got to help out the store. We owe taxes. You got to come save the store. And I'm like, I'm a comic. I'm a comic. I don't want to be no. But, I'm a comic, and I want to make sure that there was the 3 stages for all of us to be able to perform on. And so, initially I came in and, there were problems. She had been ill. She'd been in and out, and her staff, some of the staff management had not been doing their due diligence. I came in, there were like 2 or 3 boxes of legal summons and lawsuits and everything. They just threw them in a box. And it was a nightmare. Like the first few years, if we got the checks to clear for the comics, it was a win. If we got to break even by the end of the year for taxes, man, sweet. It was rough. If there were 4 people in the showroom, there was a period, it was terrible. And her son and I joke, because they always call me the Grim Reaper, but I had a spreadsheet called Death March, and I knew how many months we had left before everything just went to crap. And, but we just were tenacious. The Comedy Store, I feel like, has always just had somebody looking out for it, because just when it was the final hour, something would come through and save us, or they'd film a movie or something would happen. And, but I felt very attached to the Comedy Store, because I feel like it's an institution, and I felt like it's a really big part of Hollywood and entertainment. And I felt like whatever I could do, I was going to do. But, as my one client that I'd say, hey, Mitzi, let's look at the financials. Did we cover the bills? Yeah, I don't care. I don't give a crap. I'm like, yeah, but look, she didn't care. She didn't care. She really cared about just creating this colony of artists and just giving a place for all the, comedian misfits, a place in the world to have a family. And so she really never cared about the numbers. I just felt a real attachment to that place. And so I'm still, every time I try to leave, I'm like, I'm done. They're like, yeah, you're not going anywhere. So
I was going to say, in exchange for saving the store, I hope you secured yourself, 10 minutes in the belly room every time.
I can at least get, I can get some spots there. And I actually, separately from being the CFO, I did get my name on the wall for comedy. And so that was a real, that was more important to me, I think, than being the CFO, was getting my name on the wall.
That's awesome. So one of the things that happens to a lot of people when it comes to personal finances, things tend to get away from them. And, so what starts out as like a little problem gains momentum and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And this could be something like a tax debt, or it could be, it may be a loss of an income, especially in these days, a lot of people getting laid off. And so all of a sudden they've got an income to replace. You talk a little bit about baby steps, and I think anybody who's done any kind of research into financial stuff, has come across Ramsey's baby steps and all these different things. But you have kind of an interesting story about your baby steps and how they sort of, I guess, how you got to use them in practice, and then were able to then replicate that in the financial services realm. So I wondered if you talk a little bit about your experience there.
Well, yeah, Ryan, I got to say, like, your intro to this episode reference baby steps, and I thought you were making a joke about what about Bob, and so I literally had to like just reference that back because you brought it back again, and I'm like, there has to be like a comedy element of this because we're talking to Bob here.
That's right.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys that I was that clever, and that's what I landed on. So I spent a lot of time researching, and I put together this introduction that's really deep like that. There's some other layers you guys are going to have.
Many layers. Well, it's funny, so when I first was aware of this baby step concept, it was in Nepal. And then afterwards, I realized I'd actually done it a couple other times previously, and I'll share that. But when I was in Nepal, basically what happened was we get to Nepal, and the first day I've got all my friends that want to do this trek to base camp Everest. And the first day, as you're going into the national park, it's this incredible rough terrain just to get started. And at the end of the first day, everybody went, this is hard. Let's go back. And I'm like, I just spent a lot of money. Yeah. I am getting my money's worth no matter what. We are hiking to frickin' base camp. And so the only thing I think to do was just to break it down in smaller bites. So I said to everybody, look, how about this? Let's just agree to hike for the next hour. No other expectation. Let's just hike an hour. And at the end of the hour, let's decide if we're going to keep going. And so what we did with the first few days was every hour we would stop and as a group decide we were going to go one more hour. We weren't looking at like, oh, we got to get to those mountains over there. It was just, we're just going to get to that little ravine, or we're just going to get to that little hillside. And by breaking it down after the first few days, we were able to say, let's go 2 hours. Let's go 4 hours. It took away the overwhelm when we first started and looked and said, oh my God, we have 15 days to get there and back. And so I found that was just, for me, it was just selfish. I just wanted to freaking get my money's worth on the trek, and I wanted to get to base camp so I could put it on my resume. But what I realized that when I ran my first marathon in Greece, because that's, where you go start your first marathon.
That's where you do it, right?
Yeah, you got to do it. Never having run or trained. But what I did was, it's in kilometers. And so all I would do is just say, I'm just going to get to the next kilometer. I didn't think about the fact that I was running 26.3 miles. I was just, I got to do a kilometer. And again, it's that mindset of, oh, well, it's only a kilometer. I mean, my legs are like hurting like crazy and I'm about to vomit and die, but one more kilometer. Let me just do that. One more. And so I found that to just be really helpful. And so with working with people in the money, stop trying to get from debt to $1 million in savings. Let's just try to carve out let's knock out some of the debt. Let's just start doing little baby steps of, while we're paying down the debt, let's just start putting $5 away. Let's create a new habit. We're not going to build Rome. We're not going to have a castle at the end of the week, but let's just start baby steps, not focus on the big thing. Let's just do a little over here and let's pay it a little bit more down here. And over time, there's a huge effect when you just whittle away.
Yeah, it's amazing the compound effect and how just a little bit here and there can add up to a lot over time. And with the baby steps and the, hey, I'm climbing this mountain and it's crazy far. Just put your head down. Don't acknowledge the amount of the elevation you're going. Like if you're riding a bike and going uphill, don't look at the hill, just look at the road below you and keep pedaling. And before you know it, you're at the top. And then a lot of it is a mindset game, like with an elevation climb on a bike, for example. Like if you acknowledge that you're going straight uphill and that's all you think about, it's going to be a self-fulfilling, like I'm tired and this is going to suck. Or if you just put your head down and not acknowledge the fact that you're going straight uphill, you're down a little bit and all of a sudden you're at the top. So I like it. That's why everyone uses the term baby steps, because it relates to a lot of things.
Well, so I wanted to add to that too. So while we're talking about sort of money mindset, so there's we've talked a couple times about, having to sort of play tricks on ourselves, to overcome sort of our negative habits, right? I mean, we're having to tell ourselves certain things, or even like you mentioned, little automated hacks and stuff like that to start, shelling away a little money. One of the things that you do that I've actually not heard anybody else do, or at least not so literally, is this concept of talking to your money. And so, I think that it's, we talked earlier that there's some fear associated here in our mindset and things like that maybe keep us from moving forward. And again, it's about having a relationship with money that's positive instead of negative. But the way you talk about it is much more literal than just sort of this like relationship that we're all talking about. So I wonder if you'd sort of explore that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The way I sort of got to that was what I do in these workshops sometimes is I'll hand out dollar bills to everybody, and I'll have people stand in two lines, and I'll give $5, $10, $100. And what was amazing, even in a room with like 30 people, everybody knew where the $100 bill was, even though they're all standing in a line. Everybody knew where the $20 bill was. And the thing about money is if you close your eyes, it all feels the same, right? We just agreed that the $100 bill feels better. But if you close the eyes, it feels exactly the same. So I started thinking about how the fact that everybody wants to get their money out and to the next thing, and we don't keep the money in our wallet. So we never actually sit down and talk to it. Hey, Benjamin, why don't you talk to some of your friends and get them to come back for a party? A party in my wallet. And the thing is, people make it so serious when it's money. And I was like, let's just lighten it up. And I would have people open up their wallets, and you would see people running like in shame because they're like, what if there's not enough money when I open my wallet? How is it going to present if people see my personal thing? And just getting people to open up their wallets in a group setting was terrifying for a lot of people. Like, what's in your wallet, right? What's really literally in your wallet? And so to just start these conversations with the money, hey, like, can you go get your friends and come on back? Or hey, what are we going to do today? How are you going to show up for me? And how can I show up for you? Joking with it to just, again, try to take away this so serious when we talk to money. Money can be fun, but we've made it so serious. And so really literally getting people to just pull out your wallet. I'm just trying to think, where's my wallet? Get the wallet out and talk to the dollar bills. Like, hey, one, you look pretty cool, but it'd be cool if you turned into a 5 or a 10. Like, see what you can do.
Too late to start a family? Come on.
Yeah, come on. Start multiplying. Like, let's make some money. Well,
and I heard a recent podcast of yours with a guy named Dr. Joe Burns, who he not only entertained this theory, but he actually took it a step further. He mentioned that he does some diary entries and things like that to his money.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, too, if you think that there's sort of a component to that. I mean, it sounds silly enough talking to our money, but this idea about actually writing it down, it almost feels akin to, I don't know, writing a plan and actually working towards a plan. And so I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. And Dr. Joe is awesome. And we share we had a lot of fun, but he's actually going to do the playful conversations with money a little bit more. But the journaling is so important. Writing stuff down. The thing is, where everything is so computer and visual these days, but there's still something about pen to pencil, mind to pen, writing it out. And I think when you journal, talking to your money or just journaling what's going on with your money on a regular basis, just starts to bring the awareness in of, oh, I didn't realize I did that. Or, oh, I didn't realize I had these expectations. Or, oh, I have all this grief, or whatever it might be. When we start writing to our money, when we start journaling about our money experiences, when we get triggered, what happened today? I tried to blame everybody else when my credit card got declined, or I got really angry because somebody else is having such success and I completely failed when it came to crypto, whatever it might be. Starting to write that down, it also helps us to look back historically and say, wow, I didn't even remember I was going through all that stuff. I didn't remember that I was having this whole story about the reason that business failed or whatever happened. So I think there's great value in journaling and great value in writing to your money and writing about your money.
Yeah. You brought up the big C word, crypto. It's as a CFO, what are your thoughts on it? I mean, it's fairly recent, it's fairly new in the grand scheme of things. I'm sure you have opinions one way or another. Could you maybe just kind of go over that a little bit?
Yeah. So look, for people that love crypto, go for it. That's awesome. That's amazing. It was not something that I really understood. It was interesting. I was giving a talk, or I was followed up with the senior economist for Ameriprise. I was in this event, and so I had to follow him. But he was talking about crypto, and he's like, "I don't understand it, but I'm going to put 10,000 in, so that in case I miss the boat, at least I put in 10,000, and if I lose it, I'm happy." Right? So I was like, "I'm going to put in 10,000, and I'm going to do the same thing," and then I lost it. But and I know people that made a lot of money on it. For me, it's not that it's right or wrong. For me, it wasn't a comfort level that I know enough and that I'm not willing to get up and spend the time. I also tend to be slow at jumping on a decision. I have several clients come to me about a year ago saying, "Bob, we're doing this mining for crypto and I am making bank. I'm putting away $200,000 and I am making bank." About 4 months into it, I'm like, "Hey, how's that going?" "I've lost all my money." And but at the beginning they're like, you should come along. And I'm like, "Yeah, I like dry land. You go ahead and get on that boat. We'll see how it does. And maybe I'll buy a speedboat and catch up with you. But right now I'll let you take the lead on that." Right. So I tend to be a little bit slower when I jump into things, because I like money, but I don't like to lose it even more than I like having money. I like losing it less.
I'm kind of in the same position as you. I think Ryan did a little bit in crypto, but I never could justify, I barely make enough money to get by as it is. I can't justify putting whatever extra into it and just guessing, hoping that it does something. So I always am that guy that errs on the side of caution and watches all my friends make a ton of money on the side. And I'm like, "Oh, well, it wasn't me."
And you know what? Good for them. I'm fortunate. When I was younger, my brother-in-law said to me, "Whether you're investing in the stock market, whatever you're investing in, it's gambling, and only put aside the money you're willing to lose." And if you understand that, yeah, investing money or buying into crypto can make you a lot of money, but you also have to understand the risk. And as long as you can tolerate the risk, go for it. Nothing wrong with that. I just don't like tolerating a whole lot of risk. Yeah. And I'm happy when other people make a whole bunch of money doing it, but I'm not going to sleep at night. And at the end of the day, can I sleep? And am I having a good time? And if I'm just losing sleep and nauseous because I'm worried about stuff, that's not where I want to be.
Yeah. I always equate that to going to Vegas and putting money in a slot machine and just constantly putting money in a slot machine. And every now and then you get a little bit back, but it seems like that little bit you get back just goes back into the machine. And before you know it, you're all the way, your bank account's empty and you've got a $10,000 bill.
$100. That's what I'll spend in Vegas. $100. That's it.
I always kind of go with like a $20 bill and call it good with that. Because it's like, I don't got enough money to do with that. So you had a trip to Africa, and it supposedly changed your whole outlook and beliefs around money. Can you tell us about that trip and what changed and what that experience entailed?
Yeah. So, I was socialized that you are your accomplishments, you are the money in your bank. And so my whole life has been, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to fill up the resume, I got to do these things, and then I have value. And when I got to Africa, the average income at the time was $100 a year per person.
Yep.
$100. Now, these people were happy. What? How can they be happy? They were grateful, and they were willing to give up their last dollar to help somebody else out. They also, I'm throwing away trash left and right. I'm throwing away a bottle. "Hey, can we have this bottle?" They saw value in the bottles that I saw trash. And they just were so incredibly friendly. And that's been true. I've been to several countries in Africa, and I've found this to be true across the continent. For the most part, people are incredibly generous, kind, compassionate, and giving. And I couldn't understand it. I'm like, "Oh my God, these they don't even have a car, let alone they're not driving a good car. They don't have TVs, and they've got old VCRs that they've recycled from other places, and they're cooking in a pan that doesn't have a handle. How can they be happy? This just doesn't make any sense. What is wrong with them?" That was what I was questioning. And I just couldn't get over the fact that they didn't have all these material things and they didn't have all these things on their resume, and they were incredibly happy. And I had all these things and I was not incredibly happy. I mean, I was happy, but I wasn't incredibly happy. And it just really, it just ate away at me, like, what is going on, until I realized, wow, maybe my priorities are a little misplaced.
Yeah.
Maybe I could start to see the gratitude in all the amazing things that I have. I could just have gratitude that I have hot water, that I woke up breathing today, that even if I'm in debt, I still have the ability to change that as long as I'm alive and functioning. And so it really shifted my whole mindset to a place of gratitude, and realized that the way that I was operating was just not serving me.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to go to the Philippines when I was younger. And I was probably 19, 20, and going from, Seattle, Washington to Samar Leyte in the Philippines, and you're in the middle of nowhere. Everyone's living in grass huts and bamboo huts and, outdoor plumbing, and
Yeah.
you're literally getting water from a Boomba handle, and the families are sharing one common TV for 8 different houses. All the kids will stand around the windows and watch the TV, and you kind of go from that, the abundance mindset to the scarcity mindset, and look at how happy they are, as far as like, yeah, one TV for 8 homes, but they're all happy. They're all in the fun community. They're all, you kind of wonder, like, are our priorities straight? Do we really need that new Tesla? Do we really need that new this or that or whatever? And it to each their own, and to each their, you have to make those choices on your own. If you have the ability to get this or that, it's your decision, move forward with it. But you got to keep in mind that there's people that are without, that have literally nothing, that are way more happy than you, just because they don't care about that stuff. They don't care about the, I don't know. It's a lot to unpack, a lot to kind of just think about. But just the fact that someone living in a bamboo hut, eating rice and chicken every day because that's all they have, or is loving their life.
Yeah.
It makes you kind of have to step back and realize, maybe I'm approaching things wrong. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think about it as like a scarcity mindset versus a scarcity reality, right? So when we're in a scarcity mindset, we spend a lot of time with the what ifs, what's going to happen next, where's my next check coming from, but we're worried about what's about to happen or might happen or may happen and maybe won't even happen. But that's where we spend a lot of our time. But it seems like people who are just actually in a reality where there's a little bit of scarcity, they don't focus on what might happen. They focus on where they are today, presently. And if you listen to any of sort of the gurus or whatever, right, everybody will tell you, focus on the present, try and live in the moment,
right?
These kinds of things. And the reason that knowledge exists is just that, right? I mean, the future, we can, I guess, make positive steps in some direction and try and improve our futures. But what truly will happen, we don't know. Same thing with whatever's in the past, it's done, it's water under the bridge. So all we've got is today in this moment. Right. And so I think it's important to recognize that. So thanks for sharing those stories. So I wanted to say, and this is just sort of another mindset related question, or I want to maybe talk a little bit about how you then start to apply these things that we've been discussing so far, and talk a little bit about your style of teaching. One of the things that I think is unique to the way that you talk about finances or personal finances is that you're maybe a little more honest than some people are. So, for a lot of people, especially even experts that come on and talk about finances, right, we're looking for the highlights, but we don't like to talk about the bad things, or if we do, we really demonize the bad things. But one of the things that you really make a point of calling out is that we'll talk about the good things, we'll talk about the bad things, but we do so without judgment, right? It's not a good thing or a bad thing, really. It's just a thing, right? And we try and address it with sort of without judgment. So I wondered if you would talk about just sort of that mindset and that sort of way of approaching finance, and then get into sort of how we talk about, teaching these ideas to people, right? And you said right at the top, that you personally struggled with a little bit of that, do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. And I think that's really common for a lot of folks. So I wonder if we could talk a little bit about just sort of overcoming that in your own life and, how you teach others to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the safety component is such a big part. And I was doing that already, like intuitively, but then I also got involved with an organization called Radical Aliveness and Core Energetics that really focused on creating safe containers. There are a lot of people out there, financial people, that will help you, and they'll say, "Oh, well, I spend this much on shoes or new cars." You're stupid. You're an idiot, right? And they shame the crap out of people instead of saying, "Wow, that's interesting. Why do you think you need to do that? Like, why do you spend? What does it fulfill? What do you avoid feeling?" Right? And so they just want to get to a quick fix and get people to alter the behavior. But I'm not interested in just altering the behavior. I'm interested in understanding the behavior. And so when people come to me, tax clients will be like, "You're probably just judging the heck out of me because I'm so stupid and I just made so many mistakes." And to be able to honestly say to them, "Look, I'm sitting here not as an expert of having done everything right. I'm sitting here having done everything wrong. And so I can actually have empathy for you because I've been in those shoes. I've been in the place where I'm trying to make everybody think that I got my crap together, but I don't. And then I'm hoping that I don't get found out." And so like people are like, "What?" I think even though intuitively it doesn't feel right, being able to be vulnerable and be able to share where I've made mistakes and where I've misstepped and the stories that I had in my head, even though I think, like, I don't want people to know that or think I'm weak or think less of me. What I find is it actually brings people closer, because then they're able to say, "Oh, cool. He's not, I'm better than thou, and let me lead you to the promised land." It's more about like, "Hey, I've been there. Let's all do this together." And so I think it's so important to create this safe space so that people can have their bad thoughts about themselves or have their greedy thoughts or whatever they think that is bad, and just like express them and just be, "Okay, that's great. That's interesting information. That's useful." Then how do we then take that and look at the other parts of ourselves and see, how do we want to show up in this life? How do we want our money to serve us? How do we want our lives to be impactful or not impactful out in the world? And so what I do when I start working with people is I want to get really conscious of what their belief system are, what their languaging, right? "I need a new phone. I need a new car. I need, well, you probably don't. You might want it. And so if we can start listening to the languaging, "I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke." I have clients tell me how broke they are. And I'm like, "You've got 3 houses. You've got $2 million in a pension account. You're not broke. You might be cash flow negative at the moment. You are not broke." I've seen broke people, right? And so once I can get people to start to recognize their stories and then why they're so angry or who they're blaming, or maybe they have to experience some grief because they made some choices that were ego-based, and so they missed the boat, to just really try to start to look at all that and again, not judge it, but just say, "Wow, that's useful information. Did that serve me in the past? And if it didn't, what choices can I make differently?" When people tell me, "I got to have this, I got to have that," so I always ask the what, why, what. What do I want? Why do I want it? Why don't I have it? What am I willing to do to get it? It might be that I have to change my mindset. I might not have it because I don't truly believe I deserve it. And the why might be because I want everybody to think I'm super cool. There's no right or wrong, but if we don't understand what's driving us, it's going to be harder to get to where we want to go. And so when I'm looking at spending or looking at things and people say, "Well, I want to have a house," or "I want to have this, and I want to put my kids through college." Am I spending my money today when I'm buying that extra beer? Is that in alignment with me putting away money for a college education? Is this expenditure in alignment with how I want to show up in the world? And if it's not, do I want to do it differently so that I can then consciously say, "Yeah, this is in service to how I say I want to show up in the world." Whatever that is. There's no right or wrong on that either. We don't all have to be like, "Oh, I must be charitable and be Mother Teresa." I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that if we can be consciously honest with ourselves in what we're doing today, so that we can have what we say we want tomorrow, and we can look at that and be honest and go, "Well, I'm actually not serving myself."
Yeah. No, I really like that. What, why, what sort of structure. I think that's a really interesting way of looking at things because, I think, we've talked about shame, we've talked about fear, we've talked about all these different emotional things that, come up when we talk about money or when people think about money. And sometimes, like, I don't know, you want to buy sneakers, like, that's okay. Like, be a sneaker guy. If that's the thing that brings you joy, then be a sneaker guy, right?
Totally.
But let's figure that out, and let's, not demonize it. Oh, well, you only need one pair of shoes. I only had one pair of shoes growing up, or whatever. I mean, like, there's a version where you could really shame somebody and doing it for doing the wrong thing. But the reality is, basically, we all have our own priorities. We all have our own things that are important. And some people might be that Mother Teresa, and they just make money because they get such joy out of giving it away. Other people might want that Mercedes because the Mercedes gives them a little bit of self-worth or whatever it is. Right. And so, but I like your approach in the sense that it breaks down sort of the what's and the whys, but it doesn't apply judgment to them. So like your why could just be because I want to be flashy. I'm a flashy guy. I want to have the cool chrome wheels and the, blacked out car, I mean, like that can be your thing. Like, and that's okay. So I think that's really cool. So
I think that can be your thing if you have the finances to let it be your thing. If you're going over and bending over backwards just to have that car, just to have those extra shoes when you don't really have the money in your account to justify it. If you're going to debt and taking on 20% on your credit cards for a new pair of sneakers and then can't feed your family the next day, that's a problem. But I think that, to an extent, if you want to be flashy, if you want to keep up with the Joneses and have that mindset, go right ahead if you have the finances to do it in the first place. But if you're barely getting by, there's no justification in my end to get the new latest greatest Rolex when you can't afford,
and I was just or I would like to add to that, so I mean, yes, it is about having the finances, right? So we're probably talking to a certain group of people, somebody with some expendable cash. But I will say too, like, I mean, I've known poor people that can still muster money when they need it, right? So if they want to smoke, by God, they're going to smoke, and they might be on on their ass otherwise, and maybe they may not make their house payment. But if they want to smoke, they're going to buy that, whatever it is now, $12 pack of cigarettes, like we tend to, even in my own experience, just like even as a young person or somebody with no money, like I could prioritize something and then I'll come up with it. Right. Like, so I can make it valuable to me. And then that's the thing. So whether it's a new camera or a new light for my podcast setup or whatever, right. I mean, like I can make the excuse. So I'll forego something else to pay for that. And so I think that, some of it's prioritization too.
And I think even the thing is, at least if you're conscious that I want to be flashy, you may then make financial decisions that help you be flashy that you can do on a dime, right? Doesn't mean being flashy means you have to spend a lot of money. If you're unconscious about it, then you're going to continue maybe the creating debt and all those things. But if you're conscious of, I want to be flashy, but I want to do it smart, then at least you can start working towards, I can be flashy here and have the biggest impact. And you can actually then make conscious choices that serve the being flashy, but also being responsible.
Yeah, that seems right. So here we're starting to get towards the end of the show. I wonder if we could take just a brief minute and talk a little bit about your book and your podcast and the other tools that you use to sort of espouse the financial education, how people can maybe engage with those things and what they might get out of them. And then maybe get into where people can contact you or catch up with you online after the show.
Absolutely. Well, so my first book, The Money Nerve, Navigating the Emotion of Money, Amazon and all those good places, our website. That's a great book for couples to read together because there's calls to action at the end of each chapter, exploring your history together, understanding why your spouse or partner does what they do and why you do what you do. It's a great workbook in a way because it just sort of takes you through fears and emotions and mindset and honest budgeting. And there's some really great tools in that, learning how to have difficult conversations. I have an online course called Mastering the Emotions of Money. It also, same kind of thing, taking you through your history. How were you socialized? And then starting to look at how to prioritize, setting goals and bringing them to fruition. The podcast, Money You Should Ask, I started that podcast really as another way to start conversations about money. I mean, sort of my mantra has been, let's talk about money. Let's normalize it. Let's neutralize it. Money You Should Ask is really a way to tell stories. And a lot of people that I talk to who are highly successful, we talk about their failures because what I want people to hear is, they didn't do it perfectly either. So if we can start to remove the stigma of shame around lack of financial literacy, and also let people know that they're not alone in their financial struggles, that everybody around you is financially struggling. They're just doing a better job of pretending like everything's great. And that if we could learn to just actually go, hey, did you ever have this experience? Oh, you did? Oh my God. We'd actually find community in the fact that we've all had our struggles around that stuff. And so those are some things. And I just finished my first children's book. I've started the Financially Fit Kids book series for financial literacy. Darius Wants a Dog is the first one. Teaches about budgeting. It teaches about, well, I want a dog because my friends have dogs. Responsibility that goes with that. All the things that are involved in wanting a dog. I might want a dog. Maybe I don't really need a dog, so I'm starting a children's book series, and first one comes out in October. And so I'm excited about that. My website, The Money Nerve, all that stuff is there. For me, people can reach out. I do money groups from time to time where we'll do 3 months of just weekly meetings or bi-weekly, just to really, again, just start having these conversations around what's my money story. If you're somebody that's been marginalized, people of color, women, like there's so many people that didn't get maybe the same break that I got. And I could sit and go, my break wasn't that great, but it's still better than some other people's. And to start to just let people have space to express their stories and their struggles, and start to realize they're not alone, and that we all, whatever our struggles are, we all share some commonalities in this journey we call life.
Yeah. Are you taking on clients? Or are you kind of capped out as far as like a CPA goes?
We'll still take on clients. I mean, my practice, I brought in a partner. I started out with 1.5 employees, and now I've got 14 or 15. So that's been good. I'm at this point, I'm more interested in helping people with their money mindsets. And certainly my tax clients get some of that anyway. But to me, that's the bigger impact. I'm glad I can save people $1 million or whatever in taxes. But the bigger satisfaction for me right now is seeing people actually start to go for what they want, and to stop judging themselves and live their best versions,
Love that.
Because for me, if we're not having fun, what's the point? That's a measure for me. Am I having a good time? Am I having fun? If I'm not, where's the fun? Let me move to the fun, because life is short. It's not promised. So let's enjoy what we've got.
Love it.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, thank you so much for making time for us. Really enjoyed
Absolutely.
the conversation. It's always great when we get someone in this subject to kind of school us a little bit, because God knows we need it.
We all do, me, myself included. Always something to learn.
I love it. Well, yeah, no, thanks so much. Like Mike said, we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. See you guys next time.